John Scott, Jonathan Acosta here inside NRG Stadium in Houston after the Bills fall 23-20 to the Houston Texans. My goodness, laundry list of things that we could discuss, and we'll try to maybe go sequential, chronological, biggest talking point. Let's start with the coaching decisions, because I think that's honestly where people are going to start the conversation, as they already have probably been doing ever since the game ended here. And we'll begin with Shawn McDermott, who ultimately took the blame afterwards, deciding to throw the ball 3 straight times backed up against actually this end zone right here, and instead of running the ball 3 times, making Houston burn their 3 timeouts, and then allowing them maybe more time to operate, but no ability to stop the clock. Your thoughts?
I have a lot of thoughts. I think first off, it's important to almost frame this discussion in the context of the Texans had just had their own time management sort of situation going on where they could have ran the ball, almost taken up the rest of the clock, run it down to about 3 seconds, take a timeout, and kick what would have been the same distance field goal that they ended up kicking at the end of the game, right? But they throw the ball. Everyone's like, why are the Texans throwing the ball? Here, the Bills get the ball now. And I honestly have no issue with the Bills putting the ball in the hands of Josh Allen, their best player. There's still 40 seconds left. If you get one chunk play, you feel like you can work yourselves into field goal range. I think the issue is that once that first down pass was incomplete, then you sort of have to realize where you are. All right, you're backed up towards your own goal line. There's not a whole lot of time left. There's no timeouts. At that point, you're probably better off looking to run off as much clock as you can. The Texans have the timeouts, but at least you make them use those timeouts. You know you pick up via the ground game whatever yards you can pick up, and you punt it so that they don't have as short of a field as they had to work with when the Texans did get the ball back, where they had, 2 checkdowns. Fairbairn kicks a 59-yarder to win the game. So ultimately for me, I have no issue with the decision in and of itself of McDermott throwing the ball. I think after the first down, though, they needed to realize sort of the situation they were in.
I've gone back and forth. I actually don't disagree. I don't have a problem with Shawn McDermott deciding to be aggressive. It's an ironic twist because so many of you out there that are not Shawn McDermott fans kill him because you say he's not aggressive enough. And this is a situation that maybe he was too aggressive. In hindsight, McDermott himself saying we need to do efficient football, and maybe he feels they should have just run out the clock. But also, just understand, they had 3 timeouts. You run the ball, you get a yard or 2, you're maybe only blowing off 10 seconds. So yeah, maybe you make them burn all their timeouts, but they're probably not losing that much field position in the end. They also have more time to operate with, even if they don't have the timeouts left.
The other thing that strikes me is that momentum is kind of a weird thing, right? Here the Bills are in a situation where they have a chance to frankly steal a game in which they were outplayed, right? The offense asleep in the first half. We'll get to them a little bit later. But the Texans, some awkward time management. Here you get the ball with the chance. And I can see how Shawn McDermott could think, like, we've got Josh. This offense is feeling a little bit better about itself. Let's go see if we can steal this game in regulation, as opposed to sending things towards overtime where the flip of a coin, you never know how things can go. Here you have the ball in the offense's hands with the chance to go in regulation. I never fault a coach for thinking with that aggressive mentality.
On the flip side, though, the offense stunk most of the day, especially in the first half. And even though they gained some momentum, found the end zone a couple times, tied the game at 20, Josh in the end, 9 of 30. I mean, this is not the MVP frontrunner from a few weeks ago that we were discussing, super efficient, everybody eats all of that jazz. The past 2 weeks now, they've gotten away from a lot of that. So on the flip side, you could say, well, why, backed up against your 2 in a critical situation, would you then choose that moment to instill faith in a unit in total? Not just Josh Allen. Yes, you have faith in Josh Allen. But I think we're at the point where you can have all the faith in the world with Josh Allen, but you have to also admit what he's working with on the offensive side of the ball.
18 passes to wide receivers. Only 4 of them were caught. And if you look at the box score, out of all of the pass catchers that were targeted in this game, the only ones who caught at least half of the times they were targeted were the running backs, James Cook and Ray Davis. And so far through 5 weeks, it really does feel like the running backs are the strength of, along with Josh Allen, the running backs have been the strength of this team. James Cook obviously has been tremendous. You have Taran Johnson pitching in a couple touchdowns. Ray Davis, he's had some flashes. The wide receiver room It's funny. We talked about it before we started recording this, how it's almost poetic that they played Stephon Diggs in this game, because here Stephon Diggs is, he's getting his targets, leads the team in receiving yards, 82 for the Texans to win this game. And on the flip side, the Bills, kumbaya, everybody eats, that worked so well through the first 3 weeks, has reared a sort of ugly head the last 2 weeks, and they don't have the alpha presence. I think the alpha presence can sometimes be overrated, and I don't know if Stephon Diggs, with what he showed the second half of last season, was the guy that was needed in this offense. But I think you are seeing maybe the drawbacks of not having that guy that Josh Allen can go to when he's having a tough game, and he can throw it to one player and say, hey, I know this guy's going to go make a play when I really need it. Keon Coleman made a great play on the 4th down. Sort of a glimpse of maybe
he also got hit in the head on a slant that his head wasn't even turned.
Yeah. So, and I think that speaks to the overall issue with the wide receiver room, is not enough guys making plays, and maybe Josh not having enough trust in what he's seeing out there right now, especially because he threw some passes down the field, and whether it's Dalton Kincaid, Matt Collins, Keon Coleman, there's a few plays that just aren't being made, and there's some guys that just have not brought any value to the offense so far this year. Curtis Samuel, you're paying him $8 million a year. I think it was Jay Skursky who pointed this out. He had negative yards today in a game where he was expected to have a bigger role with the absence of Khalil Shakir. Dawson Knox, your second tight end, I can't remember the last time he caught a pass this season. So there's a lot to be desired right now from that offensive room around Josh Allen.
I want to stay on a couple points here. Curtis Samuel, I think, is the one I want to start at, because I, like you, like many, expected, all right, if Khalil Shakir is no longer in the slot, maybe you put Curtis Samuel in the slot, although he has played outside a lot in his career as well. This is the time for him to be elevated. My problem with Samuel, honestly, is I hate the way that Joe Brady is using him, which is shocking to me, because Joe Brady is the one guy that everybody has said knows how to use Curtis Samuel best. The best season of his NFL career was with Joe Brady as his offensive coordinator. The entire reason the Bills signed him, for the money that they did, the one wide receiver this team prioritized in this offseason after completely transitioning that group, was Curtis Samuel. And all they do is use him like they used Isaiah McKenzie, like they used Jamison Crowder, like they've used Daquan Hardy.
Do the Bills know it's legal to throw Curtis Samuel a forward pass?
It's crazy. As much as you could probably put some of this on Samuel, you also have to put it on the play callers and the position that they're putting him in. It is dumbfounding to me that a unit deprived of talent, seemingly, is failing at all levels to utilize a guy that we've seen be successful with that play caller in the saddle.
And the one specific kind of skill set that we've said this wide receiver room lacks is speed, with Curtis Samuel being one of the few guys who bring speed to the room, right? So I understand trying to get him the ball in space, hence the screens, the swing passes, throwing it to him behind the line of scrimmage. But what about a simple like drag route 4 or 5 yards down the field? You know, like I said, it feels like everything thrown to Samuel is behind the line of scrimmage. Even on the trick play in Baltimore, they pitch it to him behind the line of scrimmage and the play is doomed. I think, first off, if Khalil Shakir is out for any sort of extended time, I don't believe so, but if they have to miss, for example, next week against the Jets, right, that's a bad sign going against a good defense. They really need Khalil Shakir. Second of all, if he's out, they have to come up with something new for Curtis Samuel, because it's just not working the same way. I don't think it's working with Matt Collins, and overall this offense is not the same one that we saw 2 weeks ago against Jacksonville.
Curtis Samuel's an $8 million gadget guy, which is just incredible here. Let's continue this with, you mentioned Matt Collins. I want to shift it to Josh. Josh was not good today.
No.
And Josh Allen, oftentimes, because he's such an incredible player, sometimes you gloss over it when he's not great. He wasn't even good. I don't even think he was average. He was 9 of 30 in this game, and honestly, he was missing throws. I am putting the Matt Collins deep shot, I'm putting that miss on Josh. I know maybe a great receiver can make the adjustment, but the ball was forcing him to kind of turn the other direction. There was he forced a ball down the seam to Dalton Kincaid that nearly was intercepted. There was some on the sidelines, a Keon Coleman play that would have been a first down. Josh just was not dialed in. And he wasn't dialed in to start the Baltimore game either. And that stat line didn't end up looking that great either. He just looks uncomfortable. He looks like, honestly, he maybe doesn't trust or have a camaraderie yet and a chemistry with these weapons. And not only are they maybe not the level he's accustomed to at the position, but you also don't have the experience. And then I don't think the play caller's helping him out either. So you have all of this, but I don't think Josh Allen should just get a pass here for his performance this afternoon and how it contributed to the Bills not winning this game.
And I think there's one play that sort of encapsulates everything you said, and it's maybe not a play that is significant in the box score, but it was significant to me watching it. I think towards the end of the first half where they were really struggling, I think it was a third down play where he's rolling out to the right, buying time, and we've seen him make that pass along the sideline where he magically finds a guy. He did it with Khalil Shakir last week, right? And he's been so good about taking care of the ball this year, no interceptions, an issue that obviously was a big issue for him last year. It's sort of that bad Josh reared his head for one play where he, seemingly out of frustration, threw it back over the middle of the field.
It was never there.
The sideline, and it was a pass that should have been intercepted, in a lot of cases is intercepted, and he got away with it. And that's a play that we have not seen from him at all this year, because the offense has been working and he's been able to take what's there. Last week and this week, taking what's there is not working, and when they've tried to force things a little bit, that hasn't worked either. So I think for the first time, we saw kind of Josh maybe revert to a bad old habit where it could have come back to bite the Bills. It didn't in that instance, but it's something that if this trust issue with his receivers doesn't get resolved, you might start seeing more plays like that one.
That is peak frustrated Josh, and maybe it's this building too. We've seen him do some crazy, wacky things here, going back to the playoff game, pitching it to Dawson Knox. Wild stuff. I'm sure you guys remember that as well. Let's go to the Joe Brady component of this. Shawn McDermott saying afterwards, we need to get back to what we were doing offensively in the first 3 games, and he specifically said he thinks maybe they're driving the ball down the field a little too much. I don't watch the film. I just watch the games. I don't know if I've consciously noticed them driving the field or driving the ball down the field more, but it's an interesting dynamic. I also do think Joe Brady also has his hand in this. You don't see as much motion. Maybe you don't see as much creativity with the routes. And again, we mentioned with Curtis Samuel, I'm sure you could add that into a bunch of other things, not putting his players in the best position to succeed.
There's a lot of layers to this because first off, I think we have to go to roster construction. When the Bills built this roster in the offseason, they didn't build it with a significant downfield component. Your idea of downfield throws in this offense were really reliant on a rookie receiver in Keon Coleman, maybe Dalton Kincaid down the seam, but we haven't seen, dating back to last year, any sort of a downfield threat with Dalton Kincaid, whether that's him going out there and making the play or whether it's schemed up for him. It's just an element in this offense that we have not seen. So then when you hear Shawn McDermott say, I think we don't need to throw it downfield as much, I think the Bills need to throw it downfield more in an ideal world. The issue is they don't have the players right now to throw it downfield, so it really is about Joe Brady sort of trying to function with what he has and make the underneath stuff work. But this is the NFL, right? First, second, third week, it's still early in the season. The Bills are able to kind of stick to their identity and what they wanted to do in the offseason. But now as each week progresses, there's more tape on this offense. So I think it gets harder for the Bills to continue to be a team that just relies on the underneath stuff, the run after catch. Defenses see what they succeed at, what they're not good at. And after these last 2 games, if you're a defense, why are you not coming out here and saying, all right, let's test them. Let's make them beat us downfield, make their receivers win one-on-one. I think it's the strategy that Jacksonville maybe was hoping for when they went with man coverage as much as they did in Monday Night Football, and the Bills' offense was just humming on all cylinders, and the Jags are not a very good football team, so the Bills were able to take advantage. But then you play against better teams like Baltimore and Houston, and we see teams that are able to take advantage of that strategy.
The New York Jets defense sure has had the Bills' number for years now, even when they've been at their best, and they certainly are not right now. Let's shift to the defensive side of things because we saw some warts once again to that unit. Cole Bishop in his first career start, a boo-boo moment there on that Nico Collins 67-yard touchdown. Mad respect to Rasul Douglas afterwards. He did not want to throw the rookie under the bus, even though I'd spoke to Bishop prior to speaking with Douglas, and he admitted, yeah, that was mine. I just didn't read it. The communication wasn't there. But you saw Douglas turn around immediately upon entering this end zone of like, what the heck, man? Apparently the communication wasn't there. They weren't generating a pass rush early, but they kind of got their legs under them in the second half. They really held Houston in check and allowed the offense to fight their way back into the football game.
Coming in here, and after you see the way that first half goes, right? If you tell a Bills fan at halftime, hey, the Texans are going to end this game with 23 points, I think you totally take that. I think that's a win for this defense, and I think if there's any sort of bright side, something that they're 3-2 through 5 weeks, right? The season's not over. They're still in first place in the division, right? But if there's a bright spot and something optimistic that you want to look to from this game, I think it's the defense. First off, the play of Dwayne Carter, the rookie
100%.
defensive tackle, elevated into a bigger responsibility with Ed Oliver not playing here in Houston. He was fantastic. He made an early play in the first quarter. I think it might have even been first drive, a tackle for loss. He had another one in the second half where he flashed. Brought some sort of that juice that you need on the defensive side of the ball. I really liked the way Dwayne Carter played. Overall, as a defense for the second straight week, they also sort of settled down in the second half, They took their lumps in the first half. The offenses were able to kind of exploit them for chunk plays. But when they needed to, they gave the offense a chance to either get back in the game in Baltimore before the trick play happened, or here they did get back in the game, they tied it, and then some clock mismanagement ended up dooming them. Terrell Bernard, how huge was it to have him back? I think just the defense overall looked more settled down. And then obviously the interception. We saw sort of his ball hawking abilities last year. Having that sort of presence in the middle of that defense for the Bills is huge.
He shouted out linebackers coach Al Holcomb for assisting on that interception. It was a play that he was hammering the linebackers all week, saying if they do this, recognize that Diggs is going to come off the middle here, and this is your opportunity to make a play. So he credits Al Holcomb for the film work that he did to position Terrell Bernard. He said he was on the tight end, and he came off of him to make the play on the ball.
And a quick note, sort of the benefit of being on the sidelines, you get to see some stuff that sometimes is not on the broadcast. Terrell Bernard comes off to the sideline after the play, and the first guy to sort of greet him there is Matt Milano, and Terrell Bernard goes up and gives him a huge handshake, and he yells at him, I told you. Sort of speaking to the mindset that Bernard maybe felt he was going to play all week, the camaraderie he has with Matt Milano, and sort of Bernard and everyone else on this defense knows how important he is, and he sort of has the swagger that can elevate the level of this Bills defense.
And we will see if maybe Taran Johnson is the next one to return here. He was questionable, ultimately did not play in this one, had the red non-contact jersey in practice all week. You would like to think and hope, because if not, they wasted having him not go on injured reserve there. One question, though, I want to go to the safeties, because now you're out without Taylor Rapp. We did see him working, but the concussion protocol is something you could never truly get a pulse on and predict. But if Taylor Rapp can't come back, do you maybe try Mike Edwards next week, a guy that's been a healthy and active? Do you continue to roll with the growing pains of a Cole Bishop? Or, and I don't really want to get too deep into this, are we reaching a point that if Rapp is out extended periods of time and you don't trust Mike Edwards, do you in the next coming weeks consider making that phone call to Micah Hyde?
I think with the Micah Hyde situation, it's tough because we don't hear from Hyde consistently. We don't really know what his status is, where his mindset is. It's tough for a player to sort of come back in the middle of the season, And honestly, this isn't the first time, even dating back to the preseason training camp, where the Bills are dealing with injuries at safety. So I feel like if it was a call they were going to make, it's maybe a call that they would have already made in a previous week, right? So I think if we put that to the side and now boil it down to Cole Bishop and Mike Edwards, I think Mike Edwards has been inactive for a reason, something that the coaches are seeing in practice.
Or not seeing.
Cole Bishop was a second-round pick for a reason. I think he had a rookie mistake here. But those sort of mistakes are going to happen for every rookie. We talked about Keon Coleman, the pass that hit him in the helmet. He bounces back and has a nice touchdown. I think you sort of take your lumps, hope that, hey, this was a big moment for Bishop, first start. Now he has a lot more tape to review, a lot more film to look at with a start under his belt, and see if maybe he can bounce back in the second game against a New York Jets offense that hasn't necessarily been firing on all cylinders either.
Yeah, that will be interesting. I also want to give a shout out. I think Javon Solomon played well in an elevated role as well, with Von Miller out as well. The pass rush needs to continue to improve. They need to get a better push. But you're right, Dwayne Carter, he had like a handful of plays, 3-4 tackles for a loss. That guy deserves more playing time, even when Ed Oliver and Austin Johnson come back from their injuries. That guy needs to be more heavily in the rotation, because for a front that has been underwhelming probably more times than not, you need to reward and get those guys that are being impactful more on the field. Let's talk about Monday Night Football against the Jets. A little brief look ahead. The Jets fall to 2-3. Mm-hmm. The Bills are now 3-2. It's not must win, but the AFC East is kind of starting to look like the AFC least, and the Bills, as they're starting to fall back, it's a pretty critical matchup early in the season.
And I think you touched on this earlier. It's a Jets defense that, even though overall as a team they haven't been great, they sort of had the Bills' number in some situations, especially when they play in New York. The season opener last year, Whitehead, 3 interceptions against Josh Allen, crazy game. So can the Bills, fix something with this offense? Because the run game is working well. I think they ran it again today for, 5 yards a carry. James Cook, 82 yards on 20 carries. The run game is fine, but the Jets have a great secondary, and the passing offense is where you're not really clicking on all cylinders right now. And then on the flip side, Aaron Rodgers, he still doesn't seem totally comfortable in this Jets offense either. Garrett Wilson had his best game of the season so far. I know because my fantasy team was thankful for it. But he has Garrett Wilson, but he seems to have this sort of connection with Alan Lazard from dating back to Green Bay, where Garrett Wilson might be the more talented guy, but he really trusts Alan Lazard. And it sort of gives us sort of a second lens into the trust factor and how weird it can be with quarterbacks, especially comparing it to maybe the trust that Josh Allen is lacking with his current set of receivers. So I think it's just a very interesting game because it's two teams that obviously have not gotten off to the start through 5 weeks that they would have hoped for. But the AFC East is still completely up for grabs because Miami won today in New England, but you don't expect the Dolphins to necessarily be a contender if they're without Tua for another few weeks or a month or whatever. So it really, before the season, we felt like it might come down to the Bills and the Jets, and here meeting in Week 6, they're only one game apart from each other.
And if you'd have said after 5 weeks the Bills are 3-2 at the beginning of the season, I think you'd take it. Maybe if you would, your expectations changed when it's 3-0 and then you lose 2 in a row. But that's just, again, some added perspective. And let's just throw that Devontae Adams stuff out in the forefront. Jets considered a front runner because of the Aaron Rodgers connection. Reports saying this morning, 48 hours, things could ratchet up. Could Devontae Adams potentially find his way in New York by the time the Bills come there for Monday Night Football? Add it to the list of things we can talk about between now and then. With Jonathan Acosta, I'm John Scott for Channel 2 Sports.